After my last video about hopeless romantics, it was suggested that I watch the movie 500 Days of Summer. Now, I'm not much of a movie guy, it's been like 3 years since I watched the movie, but I thought, why not? And to be honest, I thought it was just gonna be another one of these 2000s rom-com where the nice guy main character meets this girl over the summer, catches feelings, but doesn't end up with her. But I'm actually glad that I watched it because even though it was reflective of the nice guy experience or the hopeless romantic, there was actually a good amount of depth to the film and an aspect that nobody really understood or at least talked about from, the reviews or common sentiment about the movie. And I watched a few of those movie reviews and the common sentiment or surface level take was that it was the main character Tom's fault. This guy who was a hopeless romantic put his misguided expectations or fantasies on the girl Summer even after she said she wasn't looking for a relationship. Which, by the way, side note, if a girl says that, you're just not the one. If her dream guy appears that checks off all the boxes, all that not looking for a relationship goes right out the window. But there was also a secondary sentiment where it was also the girl Summer's fault for leading him on, flirting, making out, going on dates, hooking up, etc. And then there was the third sentiment, which was probably the most accurate, in which they both had a fault to play. But I thought it was interesting because there was a very human element to this situation, this dynamic that's also very common nowadays in modern dating that no one really talked about. Here's a question, right? If I was hooking up with a girl, right, who, let's say I originally told that I wasn't looking for anything serious. She agreed, but I knew she liked me deep down inside and her feelings were growing stronger every time we hooked up or hung out. In that situation, would it be okay for me from a moral standpoint to keep on hooking up with her, to keep having sex with her, even knowing that she really likes me? And also knowing that I have no intentions of anything more than just hooking up and having sex with her for my physical desires. In this situation, a lot of people, a lot of girls especially would go, no, you're an asshole, you should have just cut things off, you should have stopped having sex with her. But because we're watching the movie from the guy's point of view, Tom, it's easy to look at him as this needy, clingy weirdo who got attached to a girl who made her expectations clear. She shouldn't be responsible for how he feels. So it's essentially okay that Tom became her human dildo for her physical and emotional needs. Because we're looking at this awkward, lanky, kind of weird, nice guy being depressed over a girl that he fantasized about himself. Not from the point of view of, let's say, after a girl crying over being nothing more than a human fleshlight to another guy. And because we're looking at the movie from this perspective, we don't really have any sympathy for Tom. But here's the thing, right? Oftentimes when you catch feelings for someone, your feelings, your actions will betray logic. Especially when it comes to the feelings of love. Even if the possibility of being with that person is extremely low, you're going to keep trying just because you're in love with them. And it's weird because that's the human aspect that I'm sure we can all relate to, but no one really talked about or had any empathy for. Even for girls, right? It's why a girl will keep going back to her toxic ex that cheated on her. Even though this person isn't good for you, you just can't help yourself. It's why guys will chase a girl that doesn't like him back for years on end. Just like the main character of the movie. Now, you could have said that he should have known, he should have kept his emotions in check, he should have kept his expectations in check and not fantasized, etc. And again, technically that would be correct, but it's not as simple as that in real life. I mean, of course, from a logical standpoint, you should go, this person's not looking for anything serious and be completely emotionally removed. But unfortunately, that's not reality and that's not how humans work or emotions or feelings, etc. If that were the case, there'd be a lot less broken people in the world. I mean, especially if you have the opportunity to be around this person and even have non-platonic interactions like in the movie. You don't even necessarily have to be a hopeless romantic. This is just what happens when you catch feelings. When you got feelings when you're in love, you can't think or act rationally. Your feelings will betray your logic every single time. And again, that's the human element of this movie. Even if it doesn't seem like it can work out, even if the possibility is low, even if they say they're not looking for anything serious, if you're in love with this person, there's that possibility of maybe I might be able to change their mind. Of course, you're going to keep seeing them, keep hooking up with them if given the chance. And in that sense, we can all kind of relate to the main character of the movie, whether you're a guy or a girl. Even after that scene where he lashed out and expressed how he felt, she ended up going back with him and hooking up with him again. So it's like in that scenario, how many people can actually remove themselves from that situation? So again, it brings me back to my first question. Would it be okay for me to keep hooking up with a girl, or for you to keep hooking up with a girl or a person, or have them fall deeper or catch deeper feelings, just because I'm technically absolved of the responsibility by having that shield of, I said I wasn't looking for anything serious? Just to keep hooking up, keep having sex, and keep using her for my physical or emotional needs or whatever voids that I'm trying to fill. And the answer obviously is no. There's got to be a point where the right thing to do from a moral standpoint would just be to cut them off. But I mean, it's like, if you don't really have any empathy, right, you should just keep using this person for your needs. It's not my fault how she feels, it's not my problem. I let her know what it was. And while we're on the topic, this is actually how a lot of guys use selling the dream as a tactic, which is commonly used by a lot of guys to keep hooking up with a girl. Like, there's a lot of situations where a girl knows that she's just a hookup to a guy. But even knowing that, regardless, they still choose to be with them for the off chance that, I don't know, maybe one night she might give some really good head that makes him fall in love. Like, that's the thought process, and that's why a lot of girls fall for the bad boy. And they're also in love with the fantasy of this idea of being able to be the one that changes him. You know, again, going back to the movie, very similar to Tom in a way. And this is why selling the dream is such a commonly used tactic by a lot of guys. And I also made a whole video on selling the dream and why it's bad and why I couldn't do it. And by the way, this isn't like me trying to like low-key prop myself up or anything, but it's relevant to what I'm talking about. But I've never been able to hold a situation type relationship for more than 3 dates. Like, I've never led a girl on or ever once gave the impression that I was looking for something long-term when I wasn't. I think that's bad, and ultimately what's creating more broken people. But ironically, I kinda took a similar approach to Summer. You know, where I was kind of vague with it, casual, going with the flow, only let him know that I'm not looking for anything serious after having non-platonic interactions. Because she told him in the movie after she kissed him, went on a date with him, and kind of brought it up at a high point at the date. But then Tom sort of agreed, but not really. He said, casual, we'll take it slow, and then she agreed and kissed him, which is where she went wrong. But I have taken that similar approach of just kind of being vague about it and leaving it up in the air. But the reason why I could never go past 3 dates is because anytime I could sense that there were feelings getting involved, I would cut it right then and there. And I was the type where, and I've said this before, but for a short-term relationship or a situationship or after hooking up, I would physically not be able to bring myself to show any affection. Like, it would just feel wrong. Like, I couldn't even fake it in a situation where a lot of dudes would have, you know, cuddled, gave some sweet talk to, you know, just string her along. It's funny, I remember this one situation where afterwards, we were laying on the bed and she would try to cuddle me, and immediately I'd grab the laptop and pull up some like comedy videos to break the vibes. Like, hey, let's watch some Kill Tony. Or, you know, just try to get him an Uber or try to take him home without being weird about it. Like, oh, it's getting kind of late. Because even though I technically said what it was to begin with, that's where the humanity aspect of emotions and feelings come through. It would have been f***ed up and borderline sociopathic if you just used the veil of, I told you what it was. And, you know, just kept hooking up and act like her catching feelings wasn't any of my problem. And that's another thing, right? Another reason why I was glad I watched this movie was because it was the guy hooking up with the girl, but the guy was the one wanting something more. While the girl, Summer, just wanted dick and intimacy. The main character, Tom, was her human dildo until she found the guy that she was actually looking for. And I like that dynamic because it's still reflective of modern dating and hookup culture, where there's a lot of situation where the guys are the ones catching feelings after hookups, and it's the girl that just wants dick. So I think for this guy in particular, as well as the nice guy that's chasing his crush or girl that's out of reach, or his girl best friend or something. And also for those that are on the opposing end of this, right? For those that relate to Summer. Realize that although maybe technically you're not doing anything wrong by saying your intentions from the start, also realize that feelings are a bit more complex and have some understanding towards that. Because the movie did a great job in capturing the highs and lows and despairs of the one chasing. It's a good film to watch. And I actually really liked the way that it was shot. There was this one scene where Tom, the main character, had his expectations versus reality. He ran into Summer again after already closing that chapter in his life. And just because he ran into her, he got that glimmer of hope once again, where she asked him to get coffee, she invited her to his place, they went to some party, some wedding, they danced together, and he ended up catching feelings for her again, only to find out that she was engaged. And that once again sent him down a downward spiral where this time it was done for good. And every time he asked her why she did certain things that led him on, her answer was just, I just wanted to. And even though it wasn't the same at all, it kind of brought me back to when I had a crush on this one girl in high school. I told the story on my channel a while ago, but it was such a long time. Basically, there was this girl in high school that, you know, really pretty, 4.0 student, honor rolls, ended up going to some Ivy League, you know, just the stereotypical, like, smart, pretty, like, has everything going on. And meanwhile, I was just some average, invisible Asian dude that had a crush on her. But unlike the main character of the movie Tom, I had no relationship with this girl other than just being classmates and a few conversations. But I relate to those highs and lows and having a glimmer of hope only to getting absolutely crushed. You know, just spending months building up the courage to go talk to her, fantasizing, eye contact here, walk past the hallway there, and then finally going up to her, getting her number, having that one-on-one conversation. You know, having things go fairly well only to completely fall afterwards. And then kind of closing that chapter, graduation comes along, we get a moment, things go well again, only to get absolutely obliterated. And I can see why this movie resonated so much. And there's a lot of depth to this film because Tom started off as this hopeless romantic because he grew up watching films and listening to music that inspired his belief. And Summer kind of grew up the exact opposite, where she believed that love doesn't exist, kind of detached, numb to romance, hated the idea of being any guy's girlfriend because of her parents' divorce. You know, just very liberal, very progressive mindset. And the female audience that related to Summer who felt the same way saw Tom as the bad guy, and she did nothing wrong, and probably shared those sentiments themselves. And the male audience that related to Tom probably felt the exact same as well. But really just went to show how imperfect people are and how complicated feelings and emotions are and how messy it kind of gets when two people who aren't compatible get in some kind of relationship. And also how people sometimes when it comes to love and relationships use other people regardless of their feelings or emotions to compensate whatever voids they're trying to fill, whether it be fantasies of romance they might have or a jaded love life. But yeah, it was a good film. I'm glad I watched. Maybe I should watch more movies. Anyways, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I love you. I appreciate you. And that said, make sure you stay true. I'll talk to you guys real soon. Peace.